Hello, everyone. I am Romain Moulin, CEO and co-founder of Exotec, born and raised in America, as you can tell by my accent. And I hope today I will be a bit shocking you with what I'm saying. I start with a few words about Exotec. Exotec is an integrator of end-to-end solution based on our own product. You might know Exotec because of the SkyPod. In fact, 10 years ago, we invented this 3D robot that climb on the shelf. And now there are other 3D robots on the market showing that it was the right direction. But Exotec has really shifted from being a robotics company to a robotics warehouse company. It's now a company which has been valued 2 billion in the last founding round, raised 400 million, and we have more than 200 sites all over the world. You have some brands here that we are working with, Decathlon, sports good. I will be back on that name afterward. Uniqlo, that took us to Japan. So we have warehouses in Europe, Japan, North America for them. Tommy Bahama, Lily Pulitzer. Some people that might be in the room, Gap, that took us to the US. So thank you, Gap, for your trust. And Pepsi also. I've seen that there are many Pepsi people here. Thank you for your trust. What I'm going to tell here, it's not something that we had the vision when we started Exotec. It's more something that we understood while walking. The market pushed us in that direction. And it's also the result of many mistakes in the past 10 years. We think one always underestimates the challenges that goes with bespoke automation. Underestimate in terms of money, underestimate in terms of time, and probably also overestimate in terms of quality. Maybe I will jump out of our industry with a small example. The EPR, which is the latest generation nuclear power plant that has been deployed in France, that was deployed last year. That project started in 2007 and was supposed to end in 2012. The initial budget was 3 billion. It ended up at 13 billion. And it's normal. It was the first of its kind. I hope they replicate and they make money on the next one. But there are always challenges in the first of a kind. And I hope they did not overestimate the quality because it's next to my hometown. You have an example, almost the same, not far from here. 2 kilometers away, the Sphere. Initial budget, 1 billion. Real budget in the end, 2 billion. So why is it a problem to have a warehouse with bespoke automation and a fragmented warehouse? You have an example here, and I think it could be even more complex. But let's imagine a fragmented warehouse with a shuttle, with a sequencer, with palletizers, inbound and outbound loops, and sorter with flows which are crossing. The first thing you will run into is the difficulty to guess or to make a forecast on the overall performance of your warehouse. You know the performance of the SRS, you know the performance of the sequencer, and you know the performance of your different modules. But what is the overall performance of the warehouse becomes really difficult to tell. And sometimes it requires numerical simulation, but even like that, you cannot cover all the dimension and all the possibilities that could happen in that warehouse. That's a huge universe, and covering it with your test or simulation does not really work. So in fact, at Exotec, when someone comes to me and say, we might need a simulation to find out the performance of that warehouse, the first thing I will answer is, I think you are drawing something too complex. Try to simplify and try to be convinced about the performance it delivers. The second challenge is invisible. It's invisible because your warehouse works, but you don't see what's behind. If you have bespoke automation and bespoke software, you have people behind this bespoke automation or software. These people are very specific. There are only a few key people. And by the time you need to maintain your system, your solution, or to change it, they probably have changed to another supplier, or they have even retired. So you create huge risk of production stop on your supply chain. And the last one goes back to the difficulty of making a first of a kind. And in fact, it always translates into long time for ramping up. My first job was a technical manager at BA System. It's an AGV company, automated forklift. In that company, each customer we would deliver would have a different AGV because each of them had specific needs. But each time, all of these AGV had new difficulties and new challenges. So it always worked, but it was always longer than expected. And if it takes time to ramp up your warehouse, it means you are paying for the land that you do not use, and you are paying probably for the old warehouse, which is still running and not yet disconnected. So in fact, you are destroying your return on investment that you computed at the beginning of the project. This is inside the four walls. But in fact, you get the same effects multiplied if you start to look outside of the four walls, to your network model. If you build a network model with different warehouses, each of them specific, having their own specificities, you probably will run into difficulties of optimization as soon as your variable change. You might have more e-commerce. You might have more customer in that territory than in another territory. And then it becomes very difficult to optimize this overall network. If I take an example, in the digital world, a big internet site will have a load balancer that will dispatch the work to be done on several servers. Each of them are identical, and that's what allows you to load balance. But if you start to have very different warehouses, you have no choice. In fact, they are too specific. The second challenge is the same I was talking before on a specific warehouse. The people, once again. Probably, if all of these warehouses are different, it means a different team and different people have worked on it. And if something happens, you will need to find these people. I have an example here, but the marketing team did not allow me to tell the name, so it's anonymized, of customer A that we work with supplier B, that has 20 warehouses deployed by that supplier. And in fact, what we were told is when something happened, they start by digging into the archives of the software and then trying to find the people that did that software to repair it, which means the warehouse can be stopped for 1 day, 2 days, the time you find the people. And the last one is about scaling. If you need to add throughput to your network, you might need a new warehouse. If it's a bespoke warehouse, it's a project that is more in the range of 4 years. But you don't have that time. You really need a way to expand faster. So, some of you are probably already telling, that guy is selling me a standardized stuff. I don't have a standard need. I have specific needs. I have my own logistics, and my needs are very specific to my work. And that's true. I'm not telling you that there are one-size-fits-all solutions. I'm telling you that within the solution we build for you, there must be as much standard as possible. And we need to make it from building blocks. Here, you have 3 completely different verticals. Grocery. Grocery people, probably that customer might tell you, I want to accelerate the rotation of my stock. I just want a few days of stock, 2, 3 days. I have expiration date. I cannot afford to have longer than that. Spare part. The spare part people are probably telling you, I have millions of SKU, and I have my repair shop, they want it in a matter of hours. So when an urgent order comes to the factory, I need it done in 15 minutes in the truck. So extremely reactive solution. Apparel. Apparel people, especially in e-commerce, are probably talking a lot about the packing. I want to be able to pack in polybags, in different types of cartons. I want 3D box on demand, so you need to be good at cubing. So, I agree, all of these needs are completely different. But then the key is to manage to solve them by reassembling your building blocks, and in your ASRS, changing the size of stock and changing the fleet of robots, but always made of the same hardware building blocks. That's for hardware. Same story on the software. Many people probably have already done logistics projects, and you know that software is key. The software, the WES, Warehouse Execution System, is a connective tissue between all of these modules. And the good software will make your warehouse deliver the performance. And then I would be lying if I would be telling you, we have a perfect WES, don't worry, it does your job. That's not true. And you see it on the WMS world, on the warehouse management system. There's always a standard part and the integration services that will configure or add additional specific code. And that's extremely important. It really shows the quality of your WES, the standard and specific part. When the offer leaves Exotec to a customer, they go through me. I just have a look on them. What do I look in the offer? Of course, the price and the margin, but what is extremely important is my team, how many specific labor they have quoted, how many hours of specific software is planned for that offer. Why? Because it tells me exactly the risk associated with that project and the time it will take for a ramp up. And it tells me if the WES layer is the right one, because a good WES allows you to have only a small specific part to answer to very different needs. Cherry on the cake, if you manage to have a big standard part on your WES, then you can upgrade your install base. When we started in that industry, we were told these systems are so difficult to get running that once it works, you do not touch it anymore. And then maybe 6 years later, 7 years later, you need to upgrade your server, so you need to upgrade your operating system, so you sell a big upgrade to your customer, several million, and it's a nightmare. But we had this standard part, so we said, let's upgrade the site. And in fact, it's obvious in the digital world, and nobody in that room is shocked when they wake up one morning and Workday was upgraded during the night, and you have kind of a different screen. Even in the hardware side, it has become usual to have your Tesla in the morning that was upgraded during the night, and your screens are different. So we applied that in our company, and what you see here is the first system we deployed for Cdiscount, which is an e-commerce player, in 2017, and that system is running with the latest version of software. So, all of I say looks like theory, and you might say it's good on paper. What about real life? So I take a real life story. The story of Decathlon, the sports brand I was talking about. Decathlon came to us one day, and they said, we have variation of our needs, more e-commerce than expected. We need to decrease inventory, and we need to increase the throughput of our network. We cannot do like we've done before, one program after the other. Each time it has been a drama. Each time it took 4 years. What can you do? At the moment where we said, if you want to go fast, we must apply to your network the same logic as we did for that robot which is the same for everybody. So what we did with them is to define a type of warehouse. A type of warehouse that would have functions, but that we could vary in terms of throughput and in terms of inventory. So we made for them a template, a warehouse, where in the middle, the SkyPod can have a varying fleet of robots, a varying size of stock. On the inbound, you have depalletizer line, but you can multiply them. You can have one to several. And on the outbound, the palletizer lines also will vary. And then we have deployed this warehouse one after the other. The first warehouse was used to test and to ramp up. So that was the longest project. But then our team were moving from project to project. So once the rack was assembled on one warehouse, they would move to the next one. And then the integration people would do the job and move to the next one, and then testing. So we have 7 sites with them. All of them are different in terms of robot fleets, from 100 to 250. And all of them run with the same software. As a result, they could accelerate their e-commerce promise, same-day delivery. They have shrunk their stock inventory from 2 weeks to 1 week. And they had a fast go-live. So the latest site we did for them took 9 months between the signature and the go-live. So we enter an era of conformity, and in fact, that's just the result of where we are pushed. The market is pushing us in that direction. What I want you as takeaway from my speech today are three things. First of all, as I said, you probably underestimate. It will cost more, it will take more time, and it will be hard to deliver that performance. I'm not advocating for one-size-fits-all. I'm advocating for modules that we reused and increasing the part of standard versus specific in what you are delivered. And it's an overall industry trend. The leading brands are going into that direction. They are asking for us to do so. It's ongoing. The good news is you don't have to trust me. We have live visit. So you can scan that QR code and go to an Exo tour where you can visit one of these solutions I was talking about, and you can ask yourself, the customer, if it works. So, thank you. I hope you disagree with me, because I'm French and I love to debate. So please come to the booth. The booth is 965, and I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you. Thank you.